I spent my entire life building things that would outlive me, homes, skylines, a family. I thought structure could protect what I loved. I was wrong. The cracks didn't start in the walls I designed. They started at my own dinner table. The night they said, "It's all ours now, Dad," I saw something in their faces I'd only seen in clients fighting over profit, hunger without remorse. I didn't argue. I just listened, the way architects listen to storms before they tear through glass. They thought silence meant surrender. But silence was the only tool I had left, and I knew exactly how to use it. This isn't a story about inheritance. It's about what people deserve when they forget who built their world. Like, subscribe and share. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? The ocean doesn't lie. It never has. On the evening, everything changed. It lay flat against the cliffs, still, silver, and strangely quiet, like it was holding its breath. I stood at the window of my study, watching the last light bleed out of the sky, and for the first time in years, I felt the house around me not as a sanctuary, but as a stage where something long buried was about to surface. I'm Richard Halden, 62, retired architect, widower, father. I spent my life believing that precision could protect what mattered. That if I designed every room, every beam, every line of my family's life with enough care, love would have no choice but to stay. But love isn't architecture. It can't be drafted or controlled. And that night, I learned how fragile even the strongest foundations can be. Evan and Clara arrived together, something they hadn't done in over 3 years. Evan in a tailored navy suit smelling of expensive cologne and impatience. Clara in a soft sweater, her eyes tired but kind. She hugged me first. He shook my hand like I was a client he was trying to impress. Dinner was set in the formal dining room, the one Margaret insisted we keep for real moments. White linen, crystal glasses, the old silver candlesticks she inherited from her grandmother. In the center, a small vase held dried lavender from last summer's garden. She used to say lavender meant devotion. Now it just meant memory. We made small talk at first. Clara told me about her new art exhibit in Berkeley. Evan bragged about a deal he'd closed, something about real estate and strategic acquisitions. I nodded, sipped my water, and watched them. Because that's what architects do. We observe how people move through space. And Evan moved like he already owned the room. Then, halfway through the roasted duck, he leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said, like it was a gift, "Dad, you don't need to worry about anything anymore. We've handled it all." I didn't react. I just looked at him. Handled what? The estate? The trust? The company shares? Everything. He smiled like he'd done me a favor. "It's all ours now, Dad. You built it for us. It's only right." The words hit me like a delayed tremor, quiet at first, then shaking everything beneath. It's all ours now. Not yours, not mine, ours. As if I were already a ghost at my own table. Clara froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flicked to mine, apologetic, afraid. She knew. She'd known for weeks. I set my napkin down slowly. "Who's we?" "Me and Clara," he said, though his glance at her was fleeting, almost dismissive. Though honestly, she's been passive. "I've been doing the heavy lifting." Clara opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. Not in anger. In clarity. I turned to Evan. "Did I sign something transferring control?" "Well, not exactly," he said, waving a hand. "But you've been distant, unreachable. The lawyers said we could act in your best interest if you were deemed—" "Deemed what?" I asked, voice low. He hesitated. Incapacitated." The word hung in the air like smoke. I felt my pulse in my temples, but my hand stayed steady. 30 years of drafting under pressure taught me that panic distorts vision, and I needed to see clearly. "I'm not incapacitated, Evan," I said. "I'm present." "And I haven't authorized any transfer," he laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Come on, Dad, don't make this harder. You're slowing down. Everyone sees it. This way the legacy stays intact. Legacy." He used the word like it was a trophy. But legacy isn't property. It's character. It's how you treat people when no one's watching. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stood, gathered the plates, and carried them to the kitchen. Behind me I heard Clara whisper, "You shouldn't have said it like that." And Evan reply, "He's old. He'll forget by morning," but I didn't forget. Later, alone in my study, I opened the drawer where I kept the architect's pen, solid silver, worn smooth from decades of use. I placed it beside the family portrait on my desk, the last photo we took together the summer before Margaret died. In it, Evan stands with his arm around Clara, smiling wide. But the glass over the frame cracked the day of the funeral, right across his face. I never replaced it. Some fractures are meant to be seen. I opened my ledger and wrote one sentence. When a son believes inheritance is entitlement, the father must choose between love and truth. I underlined truth twice, outside. The ocean finally moved, a slow, deep sigh against the rocks. Somewhere in the house, Evan's voice carried down the hall, laughing on the phone, confident, arrogant, certain. He'd already won. He didn't know the game had just begun, and I wasn't playing for control. Was playing for honesty. Morning came with a cold mist rolling in off the Pacific, wrapping the estate in a gray hush that matched the stillness inside me. I didn't sleep. I sat in my study chair, the red folder from last night's dinner still open on my lap, its contents spread like evidence at a crime scene no one else would acknowledge. Evan had left it on the dining table with the casual confidence of a man who believes the world bends to his paperwork. He didn't even stay for dessert. I poured black coffee, no sugar, no cream, just bitter clarity, and began to read. Not as a father grieving betrayal, but as Richard Halden, architect, methodical, precise, trained to spot structural flaws before they cause collapse. And this document was riddled with them. Page 1, a letter of intent dated 3 weeks ago, supposedly signed by me, granting Evan full authority to manage all Halden family assets in the event of diminished capacity. My signature was there, neat, familiar, almost perfect. But not mine. The R in Richard lacked the slight upward flick I've made since college. The pressure was uniform, robotic, a forgery. Not a good one, just a bold one. Page 3, an amendment to the Halden Family Trust, redirecting 80% of liquid assets to Evan alone, citing Clara's lack of financial engagement as justification. Clara, who'd turned down a corporate art director role to run a nonprofit teaching painting to at-risk teens. Evan had twisted her compassion into negligence. Page 5, a notarized affidavit from a physician I'd never met, stating I'd shown early signs of cognitive decline during a consultation that never happened. The date? The same day I'd been presenting at the Architectural Guild in San Francisco, on video, with 50 witnesses. I felt no rage, only a deep, hollow sorrow. This wasn't just greed, it was erasure. He wasn't just taking my wealth, he was rewriting my competence, my history, my very mind. Clara found me there at dawn, wrapped in her old college hoodie, hair loose. She didn't ask if I'd seen it. She just stood in the doorway and said, I tried to stop him. Did you know about the doctor's note? I asked, my voice flat. She flinched. No, he told me you'd agreed to step back, that you were tired, that you wanted him to handle things quietly. She swallowed hard. I wanted to believe it was true, that you were finally letting go. And now? Now I see he lied to both of us. I closed the folder. Truth isn't a choice, Clara. It's a foundation. And he's building on sand. I called Barrington and Pierce at 8:03 a.m. The receptionist sounded flustered when I asked for Mr. Barrington directly. He's in a meeting with your son, Mr. Halden. Tell him the meeting is over, I said. I'll be there in 40 minutes. I showered, shaved, put on a charcoal suit Margaret once said, made me look like a man who means what he says. Before leaving, I stopped by the closet where her things were kept. In her writing desk, tucked beneath a stack of pressed wildflowers, I found her journal. On the inside cover, in her looping script, legacy is not what you leave behind. It's who you leave it to. The drive to San Francisco took 38 minutes. The city rose like a steel forest against the morning fog. Barrington and Pierce occupied the 28th floor of a building I'd helped design 20 years ago. Glass and steel, all sharp angles and cold light. Fitting, Mr. Barrington met me in the lobby, face tight with professional concern. "Richard, this is unexpected." "I'm sure it is," I said, stepping into the elevator. "Where's my son?" "In my office. We were finalizing the forgery?" I finished. He paled. "That's a serious accusation." "It's a fact," I said as the doors opened. "And I have proof." Evan stood by the window when we entered, back turned, phone in hand. He spun around, eyes wide. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to retrieve what's mine," I said, walking to the conference table. "Including my name." Barrington cleared his throat. Evan presented documents that appeared legitimate. "We acted in good faith." "Good faith doesn't excuse negligence," I replied. "You're lawyers. You verify signatures. You confirm medical evaluations. You don't let a son declare his father incompetent based on a phone call." Evan stepped forward, voice rising. "He's confused. You saw how he was last night, distant, forgetful." "I was listening," I said quietly. "Something you never learned to do." I laid out the evidence, the video timestamp from the Guild, the handwriting analysis. Even without an expert, the flaws were obvious. Clara's testimony. Barrington's shoulders slumped. He knew he'd been played. "Cancel all pending transfers," I said. "Freeze the trust. And send me copies of every document Evan submitted in my name. Today." Evan's face twisted. "You're destroying everything." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "You did that the moment you decided I was already gone." As I walked out, I passed Evan's reflection in the glass wall, disheveled, furious, small. He shouted after me, but I didn't turn. Let him rage. Truth doesn't need to shout. Back at the estate, I placed the red folder in my safe, not as a weapon, but as a record. Then I sat at my drafting table, the same one where I'd sketched the first lines of this house, and wrote a letter to the board of Halden Holdings. One paragraph. "One truth, recent actions taken in my name are unauthorized. Leadership requires integrity, not inheritance." I hit send outside, the mist lifted. The ocean returned to its rhythm, steady, relentless, honest, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself again, not a ghost, not a relic, just a man who refused to let his truth be signed away. 2 days after my visit to Barrington and Pierce, a courier arrived at the estate with a plain red folder, no logo, no return address, just my name typed in crisp black font. I knew before opening it, this was the full archive. Every document Evan had submitted to claim control of my life. I carried it to the dining room, the same table where he'd declared, "It's all ours now, Dad," and laid it out like evidence in a trial I never wanted but could no longer avoid. The weight of it surprised me. Not physical weight, but moral. Each page was a betrayal dressed in legalese. There were emails where Evan instructed the firm to expedite transition due to father's declining clarity. There was a fake board resolution claiming I'd voluntarily stepped down as chairman. And then the final blow, a revised last will and testament, dated 10 days ago, leaving the Halden estate. My architectural firm shares, the Sonoma Manor, and even Margaret's jewelry solely to Evan. Clara's name didn't appear once. Mine was reduced to a footnote. Residual beneficiary of personal effects. I sat there for a long time, the silence broken only by the distant crash of waves against the cliffs. I wasn't angry. Anger is fire. It burns fast and leaves ash. What I felt was colder, heavier, disappointment. Not just in Evan, but in myself. How had I raised a son who saw his father not as a person but as a vault to be cracked? Clara found me there at dusk, holding Margaret's old reading glasses. She'd left them on the table the night she died, and I'd never moved them. "He went too far," she said softly. "Sitting across from me, yes," I replied. "But he didn't start here. This is the end of a path he's been walking for years. I just refused to see the footprints." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing the forged will. "What will you do?" "I won't sue him," I said. That turns truth into a courtroom spectacle. I won't disown him. That's just another kind of control. But I will speak, clearly, publicly, and let the consequences fall where they may. That night I drove to Sonoma. The old manor stood like a memory, made of wood and dust, shutters loose, porch sagging. ivy climbing the walls like it was trying to pull the house back into the earth. Margaret and I bought it the year Evan was born. We painted every room ourselves. It was supposed to be their inheritance, a place for family, for peace. In the attic, beneath a loose floorboard near the east window, I found the metal box. Inside, my original will, signed in 2012, witnessed by our lawyer and Father O'Malley from St. Bridget's. Equal shares. One condition: only if my children honor the spirit of family, mutual respect, shared stewardship, and care for one another. I'd never enforced it. I thought love would be enough. Now I knew better. Back at the estate, I drafted a letter, not to Evan, but to the board of Halden Holdings. I attached copies of the forged documents. I didn't accuse. I stated facts. Then I added one line that would echo through every boardroom and family dinner for years to come. Leadership isn't inherited. It's earned through integrity. I sent it at 6:03 a.m. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, former colleagues, even the mayor's office. But the call I expected came at 3:17 p.m. Evan's voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish. "What did you do, Dad?" The board froze everything. "My accounts are locked." My fiancé walked out. "I told the truth," I said. "You ruined me." "No," I replied, calm as tide. "You built a house on lies. I just stopped pretending the foundation was solid." He was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, "Was it worth it? Destroying your own son?" "I didn't destroy you, Evan," I said. "I simply stopped covering for you." "There's a difference." He hung up. That evening, I sat on the terrace with Margaret's journal open in my lap. One entry from the year Clara was born read, "The strongest structures aren't the tallest. They're the truest." She was right, and truth once spoken cannot be unsaid. If you're still with me, thank you. This story isn't about money or property. It's about what happens when we confuse entitlement with love and silence with consent. If it's moved you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m., the same time, same room, where I'd announced my retirement 2 years earlier. Back then, they'd given me a standing ovation. This time, I walked into silence so thick it felt like walking through wet concrete. Evan was already there, standing at the head of the table in a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, too sharp, too eager, like he was playing a role he hadn't earned. His eyes locked onto mine the moment I stepped through the door, not with defiance, but with something worse, panic. "Dad," he said, voice tight, "this isn't necessary." "It is," I replied, taking my old seat, the one with the slightly worn armrest from 30 years of leaning in during tough decisions. Because truth doesn't negotiate. It arrives. The chairman, Daniel Reeves, a man I'd mentored since he was a junior draftsman, cleared his throat. "Richard, we appreciate your concerns." But Evan presented what appeared to be valid documentation. "We acted in what we believed was the company's best interest." "I understand," I said. "But belief without verification is negligence, and negligence in leadership is a design flaw that collapses entire structures." I placed the red folder on the table and opened it. One by one, I laid out the evidence, the forged signature side by side with my authentic one from last month's charity gala program, the time-stamped video of me speaking clearly at the Architectural Guild, while the fake medical note claimed I was disoriented, the email trail where Evan instructed Barrington to fast-track the transfer while I was too distracted to notice. The room grew colder with every document. Then I did something I'd never done before. I played audio. For my phone, I pressed play on a recording I'd made the night of the dinner. Evan's voice, clear and smug. "He's old. He'll forget by morning." A collective breath left the room. Even Evan flinched. One board member, Elena Cho, a woman Margaret and I had worked with on the Community Arts Center, spoke first. "Evan, why?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was disappointed, and that cut deeper than any accusation. He stammered, "I was protecting the company. He's slowing down. Everyone sees it." I didn't raise my voice. Slowing down isn't the same as broken, and protecting doesn't mean erasing. Daniel stood slowly. Given the evidence, we have no choice. All executive decisions made under Evan's authority in the past 6 months are suspended pending full forensic audit. His board seat is revoked immediately. Evan shot to his feet. You can't do that. I built half these projects. No, I said quietly. You signed the contracts? I designed them. There's a difference. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the father he thought he knew, the quiet, retiring man who let things slide, had never really existed. Or maybe he'd just stopped seeing me years ago. After the meeting, I walked him to the elevator. The hallway was empty, the only sound our footsteps on marble. You've humiliated me, he muttered, not looking at me. No, I said. You humiliated yourself the moment you chose deception over honesty. I simply stopped pretending the lie was truth. The elevator doors opened. He stepped in, then turned. What happens now? That's up to you, I said. You can keep fighting a ghost, or you can start becoming the man your mother believed you could be. He didn't reply. The doors closed. That night Clara came over with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. We sat on the terrace, watching the tide pull back from the cliffs like it was giving the land room to breathe. Do you think he'll change? She asked. I don't know, I said, but I finally stopped hoping for it. That's freedom, she smiled faintly. You're not giving up on him. No, I admitted. I'm just no longer sacrificing truth for the illusion of peace. Inside, the house was quiet. No laughter, no arguments, just the steady tick of Margaret's watch on the mantel. Still keeping time even though I hadn't wound it in years. Some things endure, not because they're loud, but because they're real. Rain came that weekend, steady, soft, the kind that soaks into the earth without drama. I spent Saturday sorting through Margaret's old desk in the study, the one she used for writing letters and planning garden layouts. I'd avoided it for years, not out of grief, but out of fear. Fear that her voice, preserved in ink, would remind me too sharply of everything I'd failed to protect. That's when I found it, tucked inside a leather-bound journal filled with sketches of wildflowers and notes about Clara's first steps, was a single sheet of cream-colored stationery, unsent, undated, addressed to Evan. My dear Evan, I see how hard you work, how much you want to succeed. But remember, true strength isn't in taking control, but in offering trust. Don't let ambition steal your kindness. Your father and I didn't build this life to give you power. We built it to give you roots. Don't trade them for a title. Mom, my hand shook as I read it. She'd written it near the end, probably in the last months when she saw the shift in him, the impatience, the hunger for validation, the way he'd started measuring love in assets and influence. She'd seen it coming, and instead of confronting him, she'd written this quiet plea, gentle, loving, full of hope, and she never sent it. Why? Maybe she believed he'd find his way without it. Maybe she feared it would push him further away. Or maybe, like me, she kept choosing peace over truth until there was nothing left to protect. I sat there for a long time, rain tapping against the window like a reminder. Some words are meant to be spoken, not saved. That evening, I called Evan, not to argue, not to accuse, just to talk. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice cautious. Dad? I found a letter your mother wrote you, I said. She never sent it. Silence. Then, what did it say? I read it to him. Every word. When I finished, he didn't speak for nearly a full minute. I could hear his breath, shallow, uneven. Why are you telling me this now? He finally asked. Because I think she was waiting for you to be ready to hear it, I said. And maybe. So was I. We didn't fix everything that night. But for the first time in years, we weren't circling each other like strangers in a shared house. We were just father and son, standing in the wreckage of our own making, wondering if anything could be rebuilt. The next morning, I invited him to the estate, not for a meeting, but for breakfast. Just the 2 of us. He arrived in jeans and a worn sweater, no suit, no armor. We ate scrambled eggs and sourdough toast at the kitchen table, the one where Margaret used to read the paper while humming old jazz tunes. I lost the penthouse lease, he said quietly, stirring his coffee. My credit's frozen. My name's mud in the industry. I know, I said. I thought if I had control, I'd finally feel secure. Security isn't in assets, Evan, I said gently. It's in knowing who you are Even when no one's watching, he looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I don't even know who that is anymore." "Then start with honesty," I said. "Oh, not to me. To yourself." Later that day I went to the notary. I didn't rewrite my will. I reaffirmed the original, one Margaret and I signed together, with equal shares, mutual respect, and a clause I'd never enforced. If either child acts to defraud the other or their father, their inheritance reverts to the Margaret Halden Community Trust, funding housing for families in need. I filed it, not as punishment, as protection. That night I updated my journal. Truth doesn't always heal, but it always reveals. And revelation is the first brick in rebuilding, if someone is willing to lay it. Evan didn't call, but he didn't disappear either. He stayed in the city, sleeping on a friend's couch, taking odd drafting jobs under his real name, no Halden attached, humbling, necessary, and, for the first time, I let him walk his path without trying to steer it, because love isn't control, it's space. And sometimes, the only way someone finds their way back is by getting lost first. The Halden Foundation Gala was always the highlight of the fall season, a night of black ties, champagne toasts, and quiet pride in the work Margaret and I had built together. Scholarships for young architects, housing for displaced families, art programs in underserved schools. For 23 years, Evan and I opened the evening with a joint toast. This year, I sent a note to the committee. Richard Halden will attend alone. The night arrived cloaked in fog, the kind that softens edges and blurs the line between past and present. I wore Margaret's favorite tie, deep navy silk with silver threads, the one she bought me for our 20th anniversary. "It makes your eyes look like the ocean at dawn," she'd said. I hadn't worn it since her funeral. The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, filled with faces I'd known for decades, clients, colleagues, friends who'd watched my children grow up in this very room. Many approached with cautious smiles. "Where's Evan?" they asked. I simply replied, "He's reflecting." No drama, no accusation, just truth, wrapped in grace. During my speech, I didn't mention betrayal. I didn't speak of forged documents or broken trust. Instead, I spoke of legacy, not as property, but as principle. "We build structures to last," I said, voice steady in the hushed room. "But steel rusts, glass cracks, concrete crumbles. The only thing that truly endures is how we treat one another. A building can fall, but kindness? That echoes through generations." Afterward, a young woman approached, Lena Torres, a scholarship recipient who now ran a community design lab in Oakland. "Your son used to say you were fading," she said softly. "But tonight, you're the clearest voice in the room," I smiled. "Some people mistake silence for absence, but silence is often the space where truth gathers its strength." At dinner, I sat at the head table. To my right, Clara, radiant in emerald green. To my left, an empty chair. Not as a statement, not as punishment, but as an invitation, a space held open for the man Evan could still choose to become. He didn't come, but the next morning he called. His voice was different, quieter, stripped of performance. "I read the Foundation's new charter," he said, the one tying all future grants to ethical sourcing and community oversight. "Yes," I replied. "I renamed the Housing Initiative. It's the Margaret Halden Legacy Project now." A pause. Then, so softly I almost missed it, "I miss her too. We didn't fix everything in that call, but we shared a memory, real, unguarded, ours. And in that moment, the wall between us didn't fall. It just thinned." Later that week, I returned to my drafting table, not to design buildings, but to draft something new. The Margaret Accord. Not a legal document, but a family covenant. 3 simple principles: shared stewardship, no major decisions about family assets without mutual consent, radical honesty, disagreements go to mediation, not manipulation, legacy as service. The Halden name represents care, not control. I printed it on thick cotton paper, signed it in the architect's pen, and left a copy on Evan's old desk in the guest wing, the room he hadn't entered in years. 2 days later, Clara found me in the garden pruning the lavender. "He came by last night," she said. Read the accord. Didn't say much. But he left a note. She handed me a folded sheet of hotel stationery. In Evan's handwriting, real this time, not forged, it read, "I'm not ready to sign, but I'm reading it every day." That was enough. That night, I sat on the terrace with Margaret's journal open to a page I'd never noticed before. In her neat script, the strongest love isn't the one that never breaks. It's the one that keeps choosing to mend. Tears blurred the ink. Not from sorrow, from hope. Fragile, tentative, but real, because healing doesn't roar. It whispers. And sometimes, the quietest I'm trying is the loudest truth of all. If this story is resonating with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. These family dramas matter because they reflect real choices we all face, between ego and empathy, control and connection. And I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Winter came early that year. Cold winds off the Pacific, gray skies that lingered for days, and a silence in the house that finally felt peaceful instead of heavy. I'd grown used to the absence of shouting, the lack of urgent calls, the end of performative charm. In its place was something quieter, harder to name, possibility. It was Clara who brought it back to life. One Saturday morning, she arrived with a small wooden toolbox and a thermos of spiced tea. Without a word, she went to the mantel, picked up Margaret's old wristwatch, the one that had stopped ticking the week she died, and carried it to the kitchen table. "I've been meaning to do this," she said, opening the box to reveal tiny screwdrivers, brushes, and oil vials. "It's not broken, Dad, just neglected." I watched as she carefully pried open the back, removed the dust-caked gears, and cleaned each piece with a soft cloth. Her hands moved with the same patience she used when painting, the same hands that had held mine at the hospital when Margaret took her last breath. After an hour, she reassembled it, wound the crown 3 times, and placed it gently on the table. Tick, tick, tick. The sound was faint at first, then steady, a heartbeat returning to a room that had forgotten how to pulse. I picked it up, held it to my ear. "You brought her back," I whispered. Clara smiled, eyes glistening. She never left. We just stopped listening. That moment changed everything. Later that week I called a lawyer, not to revise my will, but to transfer the deed to the Sonoma Manor into Clara's name. Not as inheritance, as trust. "It's yours," I said when I handed her the papers. "Not to sell, not to hoard, but to breathe life into. Paint in the attic. Host artists. Let it be a home again." She hugged me so tightly I felt my ribs ache. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. "Not just as the good daughter, but as me." "You've always been enough," I replied. I just got distracted by the noise. But the real surprise came a few days later. Evan showed up unannounced. Not in a suit, but in a worn flannel shirt and boots, carrying a duffel bag. He stood on the porch, hesitant, like he wasn't sure he was still welcome. "I got a job," he said when I opened the door. "Junior draftsman at a small firm in Berkeley. No Halden name, no legacy leverage. Just me and a pencil." I stepped aside. "Stay as long as you need." He moved into the guest wing, the same room where he'd once declared the estate all ours. Now, he unpacked quietly, hung his few clothes in the closet, and sat on the edge of the bed like he was bracing for judgment. I brought him tea. "No expectations," I said. "Just be here," he nodded, eyes down. "I keep thinking about what Mom wrote, about roots versus titles." "Roots take time," I said, "but they hold you through storms." That evening, we sat on the terrace as the sun dipped below the cliffs. No agenda, no performance. Just 2 men watching the ocean remember its rhythm. "I turned down a job offer yesterday," he said suddenly. "A big firm. They wanted to use the Halden name for marketing." I said no. "Why?" I asked. "Because it's not mine to sell," he said. Not yet. I didn't praise him. Didn't celebrate. Just nodded. Some truths don't need applause. They just need witness. Later, I updated my journal. Rebuilding doesn't start with grand gestures. It starts with showing up unpolished, uncertain, and willing to try. And for the first time in years, I believed it because healing isn't a destination. It's a daily choice. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is walk back through a door they once slammed shut. Spring arrived not with fanfare, but with quiet insistence. Green shoots pushing through last year's ash, birds returning to the eaves, and the scent of jasmine drifting through the open windows of the study. It was there at my old drafting table, the same one where I'd sketched the first lines of this house 30 years ago, that I sat one morning, not with blueprints, but with blank paper and a question. What comes after truth? The answer didn't come in a flash. It came in fragments, first from Clara. She'd opened the Sonoma Manor as an artist residency. Her first exhibit, Fractures and Foundations, featured paintings of broken glass mended with gold, a Japanese art called kintsugi. Beauty in repair, she told me. I stood in that sunlit gallery and wept. Then, from Evan, he'd started attending city planning meetings, not as Richard Halden's son, but as Evan H., just a man with ideas about affordable housing and green spaces. He called me one night, voice tentative. I pitched a community center design today. They liked it, no bragging. Just pride, earned, not assumed, and then the idea took shape. I wasn't going to design another skyscraper, but I could design a new kind of family agreement, one that didn't rely on legal threats or conditional love, but on shared values. I called it the Margaret Accord, not because it was binding, but because it carried her spirit. I wrote it by hand, in the architect's pen. We steward what we share, not as owners, but as caretakers. When we disagree, we seek understanding, not victory. The Halden name is not a brand. It's a promise to build with integrity, serve with humility, and honor the roots that hold us. No clauses about disinheritance. No penalties, just principles. I invited them both to the estate on a Sunday afternoon. No agenda, just lunch. We ate on the terrace, the ocean humming its ancient song below. Afterward, I handed each a copy. Evan read it slowly, fingers tracing the words like he was memorizing them. Clara cried, not from sadness, but from relief. This isn't a contract, I said. It's an invitation to choose every day who we want to be together. Evan looked up, eyes raw. What if I fail again? Then you'll learn, I said. Failure isn't the end, it's data. And data helps you redesign. He didn't sign it that day, but he took it home. And the next week he emailed me a revised version, with one addition in his own handwriting. We forgive each other's stumbles because we've all been lost. I printed it, framed it, hung it in the study beside the cracked family portrait. A few days later, the board of Halden Holdings called. After the audit, they'd cleared my name completely. They offered Evan a junior advisory role, not as heir, but as apprentice. He accepted. He also did something unexpected. He visited Barrington and Pierce and formally retracted every false claim he'd made about my capacity. My father is sharp, capable, and fully in command, he told them. I was wrong, and I'm making it right. That night, I sat on the terrace with Margaret's watch, ticking softly in my pocket. The stars were bright, the air clean. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a burden. It felt like open space, because legacy isn't about who gets the house, it's about who carries the values. And sometimes the deepest repairs begin with a single honest sentence. I was wrong. The morning of the signing was clear and bright, golden light spilling over the cliffs, the ocean calm as glass. I set up the dining table not with legal pads or contracts, but with 3 chairs, 3 glasses of water, and a single sheet of thick cotton paper. The Margaret Accord. No notary, no lawyers, just us. Clara arrived first, wearing a simple linen dress the color of seafoam. She brought wildflowers from Sonoma, purple lupine and yellow poppies, and placed them in the old lavender vase. For balance, she said with a smile. Evan came an hour later. He didn't wear a suit, just dark jeans and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, the same way he used to dress when helping me build Clara's treehouse as a boy. He carried nothing but a pen, his own, black and unadorned. We sat. No one spoke at first. The silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Then Evan cleared his throat. I've read it every night for 2 weeks, he said, eyes on the paper. I kept waiting for a trap. A clause that said if you mess up again, you're out. But there isn't one. Because love isn't conditional, I said. Accountability is, and you've shown up for yours. He nodded, jaw tight. I spent so long trying to prove I deserved the name, I forgot what the name meant. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. It means we build together, even when it's hard. I watched them, my children, fractured and finding their way back, and felt Margaret's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. Then Evan picked up his pen. He didn't hesitate. He signed his name beneath the 4 principles, his handwriting steady, clear, real. Clara signed next, her script flowing like water. I was last. I used the architect's pen, the same one that signed every blueprint, every contract, every promise I ever made. As I wrote Richard Halden, I thought of Margaret, of the life we built, of the cracks we never saw coming. And I knew this wasn't an ending. It was a new foundation. Afterward, we didn't toast with champagne. We made coffee. We ate toast with apricot jam, the kind Margaret used to buy from the farmer's market. And we talked. Not about assets or control, but about Clara's next exhibit, Evan's community center design, and whether we should replant the rose garden this summer. Later, as the sun dipped low, Evan lingered on the terrace. They offered me the interim CEO role at the firm, he said quietly. I turned it down. Why? I asked. Because I'm not ready, he said. And, pretending I am, would dishonor everything you built, and everything I'm trying to become. I put a hand on his shoulder. That's the first truly wise thing you've said in years. He smiled, small, genuine, unguarded. Now I'm learning. That night I updated my journal one last time. Truth doesn't always heal, but it always reveals. And when people choose to face what's revealed, with humility, with courage, that's when real legacy begins. I closed the book. The house was quiet, the watch ticked, the ocean breathed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole, not because everything was fixed, but because we were finally building something true. If you've stayed with the story to this point, thank you. It's not about grand revenge or dramatic punishment. It's about the quiet courage to choose truth over comfort and love over control. If it's touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does reveal what's worth keeping. A year has passed since the night Evan said, "It's all ours now, Dad." The words still echo sometimes in quiet moments, in dreams, but they no longer carry power. They're just a memory now, like an old blueprint of a building never constructed. The estate is different now, not because the walls changed, but because the people inside them did. Evan lives in the guest wing, not as heir, but as son. He wakes early, sketches at the kitchen table, and takes the bus to his office in Berkeley. He's designing a community center for veterans now, modest, functional, full of light. No Halden name on the renderings, just his initials, E.H. He's earning his place, one honest line at a time. Clara turned the Sonoma Manor into a sanctuary. Artists come from all over the country to paint, write, heal. Her latest exhibit is called The Space Between, canvases that explore the quiet moments after rupture, before repair. One piece shows a cracked watch, gears exposed, still ticking. She dedicated it to Dad, and the courage to wind again. And me? I sit most mornings in my study, not drafting buildings, but letters. To grandchildren I hope to meet. To young architects who write asking for advice. To Margaret sometimes, just to tell her the roses are blooming again. The red folder sits locked in my safe. Not as a weapon, not even as a warning, just as a reminder, truth doesn't destroy. It clarifies. One evening last week, Evan found me on the terrace, watching the tide roll in. He handed me a folder, his own this time, plain brown, no theatrics. "I submitted the final plans for the community center," he said. They approved it. I flipped through the drawings. Clean lines, smart use of space, human-centered design. "You've grown," I said. He looked out at the ocean. I had a good teacher. We stood in silence for a while, the only sound the waves and the steady tick of Margaret's watch in my pocket. Then he said, I used to think legacy was something you left behind. Now I see it's something you live." I put an arm around his shoulders. "Your mother would be proud." He didn't reply, but his eyes glistened. And in that moment, I saw not the man who tried to take everything, but the boy who just wanted to be seen. This story doesn't end with a grand victory or poetic justice. It ends with presence, with choice, with three people learning that family isn't a transaction, it's a covenant, renewed every day through honesty, humility, and the willingness to try again. The strongest legacies aren't carved in stone or signed in ink. They're lived in the way we listen when it's hard, in the space we leave for others to grow, in the truth we speak even when it shakes the ground beneath us. Because love isn't about ownership, it's about stewardship. And the greatest thing we can build us into a house of glass and steel, but a home of trust, where even broken things are given room to heal. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own family, your own choices, your own quiet battles, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that truth still matters. And wherever you are in the world tonight, thank you for being here. The ocean remembers, and so do I.